Never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are. Never let the man that you're against form your opinions. This is the trick that's played on everyone who's oppressed. When you have a revolution in the country, the first thing you take over is the radio. And then you start telling the people that everybody, the war is over. And so all of them surrender. No, they believe that thing right there. And once they take that over, they start telling you where you are and where they are, and you fall right in line. It's plain thought control. The majority of the American people aren't segregationists. That the majority of the American people aren't imperialists.
Lies.
But the government.
We've been fed up and the rage is getting higher. We fucked around and found out the devil afraid of fire. So now when we get turned up, shit get burned up. I see a lot of souls turn up and that turn up. And we came to take the statues down and take the crown. I seen it on the news, a crowd of pigs powering down. We did all of that without no marching or no vote. We was running through them precincts, leaving shit smoking like.
What's up, everybody? This your boy, Bless the Best, coming at you once again from behind this familiar mic, right? I know it's been a minute. I've been leaving the people hanging a little bit, but you know me. I work a lot, and I found a little time to make a couple videos today, right? Okay, today is Monday. I'm not sure of the exact date, but it's the Monday after Malcolm X's birthday, which was May 19th, right? I probably, people that listen to me all the time, they know that Malcolm X is one of my favorite human beings ever to walk this earth. Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, even Tupac, to a degree, embody the same spirit. It is very, very rare, and the type of spirit that those men embodied is a very, very dangerous spirit for the power structure in America. That is why many men, not many, but those few that possess the proper levels of consciousness and cool and fearlessness are very, very dangerous to the status quo. That's why these people come up missing and murdered so often in our history, right? But today, I'm doing this in the usual Bless the Best style, right? I always reach to these master teachers, right? Because they can articulate the point better than I can at this time. And so I like to use them like as an aid. And I will add my little measly 2 cents in when needed, right? So this morning, I'm bringing to you one of my favorite orators on the YouTube scene right now. Upper echelon, one of the best is my guy, Professor Black Truth. And I'm going to play a little bit of what he said about Malcolm X on his birthday. And I'll be jumping in and out on the very, very relevant points made. So, without further ado, I bring you Professor Black Truth on Malcolm X.
I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth.
Never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are. Never let the man that you're against form your opinion. This is the trick that's played on everyone who's oppressed. When you have a revolution in the country, the first thing you take over is the radio. And then you start telling the people that everybody, the war is over. And so all of them surrender. No, they believe that thing right there. And once they take that over, they start telling you where you are and where they are, and you fall right in line. It's plain thought control. The majority of the American people aren't segregationists. That the majority of the American people aren't imperialists.
Lies.
But the government is, the structure is, the power faction is. So, how then do all the majority go along with it? Because those who sit in power over the television, over the radio, and over the press is constantly telling those who are the masses how free they are, and how this they are, and how that they are.
May 19th, is one of our most solemn and important holy days. It's the day that Malcolm X, aka El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, was born. You know a man is truly great when his esteem and following is greater after his life than it was during it. Malcolm was not merely an extraordinary intellect and moral leader, he was also a truly effective advocate for his people. I say that because Malcolm was eminently quotable. Dr. King was an excellent orator, but his prose tended to be soaring rhetoric, and fine as speeches he delivered, oftentimes you could only remember small parts of it. But with Malcolm, you tended to remember it all. That's why wherever he went, the people always called out, "Make it plain."
You can see the fire in his eyes, people. Look at those eyes.
The truth is not flowery prose or soaring rhetoric. It is understood by all. What is often missing is someone who can crystallize what's on the tip of everyone's tongues.
That's right.
Malcolm was an expert at that. His skill and efficiency in delivering his message was better than men twice his age with 4 times his education. Any fool can speak their mind, but it takes a special kind of person to speak the truth.
That's right.
When Malcolm engaged in a debate, he never lost. First, because he made sure to get his own position straight. He didn't simply argue with someone from a place of raw emotion. Part of what the Nation of Islam taught is to make sure that whatever position you're expressing, it must be rooted in fact and not opinion. The enemy will try to wrap you up in words and made up facts, mostly from sources that he himself controls. You have to
That sounds like somebody else I know that wants to qualify sources.
know what your beliefs are based on. And you have to have the intellectual courage to be able to look at your enemy's position so that you can dismantle them. Part of mastering a particular area of study is being able to explain it in simple terms. That's a key ingredient in crafting arguments meant to get your points across and be persuasive.
I've said that many times before in the past, not in the exact same words, but when someone is being intentionally wordy and it's kind of hard to follow what they're talking about, most of the time that's somebody that's trying to deceive you. The truth is simple, and the truth goes in a straight line. You don't have to go around all these corners and use all these qualifiers when you're dealing with truth.
When Malcolm X was in a debate, it wasn't a debate at all. It was a master teacher showing his conceited opponent everything they didn't know. His arguments were unimpeachable. He didn't give just facts. He showed how his facts fit into the real world, and he did it at a level that his opponent simply couldn't match. It was the difference between surface knowledge and root knowledge. And best of all, Malcolm made it look so easy.
Surface knowledge and root knowledge. Surface knowledge is mixing lies with the truth.
He learned his position, and he also learned the talking points that his opponents would try to use, and he made certain that he was ready. I tried in so many ways to learn from our Grandmaster teacher Malcolm. He's the reason why, even after all these years, I still take as much time as I can with each and every video essay that I do. I want to make sure that what I say is not only clear, but also makes points that you can use and take out into the world. Malcolm is not here physically, but every time you have a brother or sister who utterly shuts down some white supremacist, who says what you were thinking better than you feel you could have said it, Malcolm lives. Malcolm was an autodidact. That means that he taught himself. When you make it a point to dive into a particular subject and keep at it, Malcolm lives. Before anyone in the new black media said it, before we were even born, Malcolm.
All right. I'm gonna go ahead and stop with the bullshit, right? Okay. I was listening to this video, and just like when I listen to something, I try to, apply it to real life. I try to compare it to real life and different things that I go through, and different things that I'm into personally. Okay. If you own this channel, you already know that most of my content deals with the slave trade, American Indians, this and that. And the main guy that's on the forefront of the indigenous American Indian movement is Dane Calloway, right? Somebody that lies his ass off for money, right? So when I first heard him, I was like, knocked me off my chair. I'm like, oh hell no, what? All this and that, you know, the things about the black Americans being misnamed American Indians, right? I'm from the South, so of course I've got Indian in my family line many times. So I dove all the way into the topic head first. I made one video where when I first discovered him, and I was like, yeah, I'm about to look into this and see who this guy is. You know, is there any truth to what he's saying, right? So as I got digging into it, I found some things true, some things false. I learned all of the talking points that he gives out on his channel, and I can counter each and every one. I had an original position, which is that maybe some of us are American Indians, but the transatlantic slave trade definitely happened, and African people were brought to the Americas, enslaved, and their offspring still remain as black Americans, right?
Malcolm was telling everybody, don't trust the white media. He was telling you that your enemy owns that television you watch and everything you see on it. Your enemy owns that newspaper and everything you read in it. Your enemy owns that radio and everything you hear from it. Your enemy owns every single so-called black leader you know because you didn't choose them. The key to white power rests on the lies that it tells, but also the organized violence that it uses to force black people to live within the confines that it sets up. So we as black people, as the people who built this country and gave the world a renewed sense of humanity and self-determination, we have a special role to play in restoring justice to this planet. And that starts with how we see ourselves and what we do about ourselves. Something as simple as what we call ourselves. What's that old saying? Would a rose by any other name be just as sweet? Well, Malcolm proved that it very well could be. He showed that when you define yourself, you empower yourself. One definition of power that I've often heard is that power is the ability to define yourself and to define your relationship to those around you in such a way that your definition becomes theirs. Malcolm Little defined himself as Malcolm X, and then defined himself again as El Hajj Malik al-Shabazz. And when he did, white power had to address him by what he said to call himself. What we do at the individual level is the most basic and the most important act of self-determination. It may sound small because you're only talking about one person, but when Malcolm went on television and he spoke with overwhelming intelligence and eloquence, he made having the last name X cool. It became something to be taken seriously because Malcolm defined it. He became the living embodiment of the very ideals that he expressed.
And for that reason, they said, this nigga has to go. This nigga has to go now because he can crush the power structure. It's very, very, very dangerous to be this great. Greatness in the field of black empowerment puts your life on the line every day. That's why I take it seriously.
This man who had blinding intelligence, piercing discernment, and charisma to burn. If there was a prototype for the total intellectual and spiritual package, it was Malcolm X.
Okay.
He exercised power by defining himself. And that's why it was so important to me to start reminding
You see that picture on the screen? You can see the fire in his eyes by what I see in the background, which appears to be the Capitol. Maybe not, but I assume that he's on some type of news program, and the commentator on the news program is probably asking him a question right now. And just look at the fire in his eyes. He is looking straight through that cracker. But let's go.
Family every year when these holy days come round. Dr. Ben said that we don't need to be asking for a day, we need to take a day. And he was right. If something's important to you, then you make time for it. And you don't need any white supremacist permission to do that. In fact, it's better if you deliberately defy white power to do something that exalts and honors black empowerment. It's like I've always told you. The law is whatever the people are willing to abide by. You have holidays that are recognized by the federal government, like Juneteenth, and you have other days where people take off work no matter what anybody thinks. Usually they go and get sloppy drunk or whatever. Super Bowl Sunday comes to mind, as does St. Patrick's Day. People choose what is important to them. Knowing who Malcolm was and living on his own terms, that's what was important to him. And you could tell it was important because he did it back when nobody else did, before it was cool to change your name, to call yourself by what you want to be addressed as. And when the white media tried to make having an X as your last name a bad thing, Malcolm didn't back down, he doubled down. So let's take a lesson from our Grandmaster teacher and understand the world on our terms. Don't let the white media tell you who you are, and don't let them tell you who Malcolm was. The white media's entire job is to control people through lies. That's why they always try to set up some phony rivalry between this or that black figure, be it Booker T and W.E.B. Du Bois or Malcolm and Martin. While they may have occasionally differed with one another, sometimes even on issues of principle, they were hardly at one another's throats. See, the white media takes black people who are on the same side and tries to invent an artificial fight between them, some made-up antagonism. This is a clever way to try to pit black people against each other. But notice how the white media never tried to make a rivalry between Dr. King and, say, FBI agent Elder Michaud. That sellout was literally taking orders from J. Edgar Hoover, and he attacked Dr. King every chance he got.
Elder Michaud. He is a lesser-known religious figure from back in the day, and he was a sellout federal informant who tried to take down the movement. Maybe I'll do a video about him next.
God, but the white media never told black folks that they have to choose between Dr. King and Elder Michaud. One of Malcolm's greatest gifts to his people was to popularize mind control. And by that I mean controlling your own mind, thinking and acting for yourself. It's hard in the beginning. As human beings, we're social creatures. There's a lot of good things to be said about being a social creature, but there's also a lot of disadvantages to it too. Being part of the herd means mediocrity. The herd can only achieve a base level of success because the herd has to have a level that everyone can do.
That's why it's so important not to go by numbers when you're looking for information. Large numbers are, in some cases, a red flag.
But if you want to elevate yourself, then you have to break away from the herd. Now, when that happens, there's going to be someone who inevitably comes along with a rope or a stick, maybe some members of the herd who try to drag you back in line. They don't want you to give the rest of the herd any ideas. They don't want you to show what's possible.
You can find plenty of those in my comment section. They try to silence my talking points because they know if it gets heard widespread, people will realize and recognize that it's the truth.
Malcolm taught us not to chase the mirage of alliances. All these other groups cannot claim to be oppressed. They are perhaps occasionally mistreated, but none of them can claim to be oppressed. The Germans, the Irish, the Jews, the Italians, and these other groups who say that they've been oppressed, they didn't need a 13th, 14th, or 15th Amendment simply to establish that they could be free, at least free from chains on a plantation, or to basically establish that they are citizens. They didn't need that. And they didn't need a Voting Rights Act or a Civil Rights Act. Those things were only necessary because this country refuses to stop its violent repression and persecution of black Americans. So when someone tells you that we owe something to an Abraham Lincoln or an LBJ, you tell them take those lies somewhere else. When you have some white Democrat telling you that they're on our side, or some white Republican telling you that Republicans supported the Voting Rights Act, or Abe Lincoln was a Republican, you tell them that black people have been mass incarcerated and mass impoverished every day we've been in this country. And none of these laws or these white politicians have changed one iota of that.
But you gotta have balls to do that at work when moving in society. That's why right now I can't do a conventional job with company policy and all that. I have to be out there on my own with flexibility because I never know what I might say that may go against the company policy.
we were to give thanks to an LBJ or an Abe Lincoln, we would literally be giving thanks for nothing. You have too many faux white political activists who simply want us to give them a pat on the back. That way they can express some phony sympathy. Well, I'm afraid black folks can't give anyone any pats on the back because we got our hands full. I am proud to, in my own modest way, be part of that lineage of advocacy and thought that Malcolm championed so well. He did it far better than me, and that's fine. It gives me something to aspire to every day. Speaking of today, I want you to take some moment today to give thanks to Brother Malcolm in spirit. We don't stand on the shoulders of giants, we stand on the shoulders of titans. And he was one of the tallest. The message, the code that he expressed was so important to him, and it was important that his people adopted as well. He didn't want us to be confused about the world or our place in it. He didn't want us chasing phantom friends or to be misled by sellout leaders.
That's right.
He wanted us to take the principles that we know to be true and to live by them and to be uncompromising about it. And that process begins with each and every one of us individually. When a group of people adopt a code and live by it and enforce it within their group, that becomes a law unto itself.
That's right.
Malcolm defined himself, and we as black Americans have come to define what is honorable about this country. Precious little, to be sure. But everything the rest of the world thinks of as positive about the U.S. came from us. From the concept of basic human rights, to how to fight for those human rights, to style, music, and personal expression, we have given to the world the greatest and longest-lasting expression of revolutionary fervor that the world has ever seen. Malcolm's journey was in fact a microcosm of our own, the journey of a people determined to have their freedom and their power, and who realize they have a right to stop anyone who attempts to force us to live any other way.
That's right.
Malcolm knew better than anyone that we have a right to our share of the world, and to secure our place in it, by any means necessary.
And we're going to end it right there. So I will continue to do what I can to spread this message as wide as I can, as much as I can. So with that being said, this is your host. Till the next post. Bless the damn best. And I'm out of here.